On this panel, we will discuss the opportunities and the investment in the mineral resources sector. And this is my great pleasure to introduce to you the moderator of this panel, an excellent woman who is the co-organizer of Ukraine House Davos, the founder and CEO of the Horizon Capital, and the chair of the board of directors at the American Chamber of Commerce, Lena Kožarny. Please.
Thank you. Oh, we're going to do one more thing. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Everyone who knows me knows that Horizon Capital invests in not critical minerals. We're not in the space. And folks may be wondering, not yet, we'll say, we're doing export champions. We're doing fast-growing domestic. We're doing tech. But what folks don't know is that when I first moved to Ukraine in 1993, I did my dues in Zhovty Vody, 3 years. 3 years of working at Vostok, 3 years right shoulder to shoulder, uranium ore, uranium processing, going 1,000 meters down into iron ore mines as we were developing technologies with aluminum scandium alloys. And this is what I did when I first came to Ukraine in 1993. So I feel very pleased to be moderating this panel. And I hope everyone liked the general video, but we would like to show you one that really focuses on critical minerals and why this is so important today for Ukraine and for sectors that matter to all of us. Please roll the video.
Get acquainted with Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe, a major player in the metallurgy market, a transport hub. In the 21st century, this is not enough. We are creating a new high-tech industry, an industry that will bring together nanotech, robotics, space research, innovative healthcare. We are creating a new economic reality. The time has come for boutique metallurgy. The Ukrainian mines and carriers are rich in rare earth and trace elements. Reserves of raw materials crucial for modern industry are found here. These are priceless components. The consignment of such metals can consist of several grams, but without them, it is impossible to imagine space exploration, complex surgical operations, the production of miniature gadgets, and the development of nuclear energy. Without them, the future is impossible. The Ukrainian shield contains the deposits of unique minerals: titanium, uranium, beryllium, tantalum, nickel, cobalt, gold, and many others. The deposits are concentrated in well-explored regions of the country, with extended transport links and industrial infrastructure. Cobalt. Cobalt is used in space and aviation technology and in the chemical industry. This is the main raw material for the production of batteries. Nickel. Due to heat resistance and corrosion resistance, nickel is indispensable as a structural material. It is the basis for stainless steels. Nickel is also included in the so-called superalloys. In the aerospace industry, they are used to make turbine parts. Tantalum. Tantalum capacitors make an indispensable part of portable electronic devices, laptops, video cameras, communications equipment. This is a unique material for the production of surgical wire, sheets, and foil for fastening tissues and nerves. The human body accepts tantalum as its own bone tissue. Titanium. The 21st century is the century of titanium. Titanium alloys are used in rocket engineering, aircraft construction, and in the production of parts for oil and gas drilling platforms. Graphite. The industrial use of graphite is incredibly diverse due to its characteristics and properties. It is indispensable in metallurgy, engineering, nuclear energy, and with the production of graphene, graphite must certainly be considered the stuff of the future. Beryllium. Without beryllium oxide, it is impossible to make high-performance computers, lasers, radars. Having the largest stock of beryllium ores in Europe, Ukraine may become a pioneer in the production of beryllium alloys. The world has entered an era of new technology. The demand for resources for the technologies is growing steadily and irreversibly. Ukraine is a storehouse of various metals. It has developed scientific and experimental infrastructure. Ukraine is a unique logistics hub located at the crossway of transport corridors between the countries of Europe, the Middle East, and the states of the Asian continent. Ukraine is a unique opportunity to participate in the creation of a high-tech industry in the center of Europe. Ukraine is a country of the future. Invest in Ukraine today.
Thank you so much, BGV, for that amazing video. I learned so much, and I'm sure a lot of people did as well. We have a rockstar panel. We have been dreaming about this panel for a year. And the first person that I want to invite on stage needs no introduction. He's an incredible advocate, an incredible investment ambassador for the country, Alexei Sobolov, First Deputy Minister of Economy of Ukraine. Next up, I'm happy to welcome Serhiy Wojciechowski, Board Member, BGV Group Management. I'll add that Serhiy has 20 years of experience in managerial roles. We all know him through his involvement at ATB. He joined Gennady Butkevich's BGV Group Management Investment Group, and now he's focused on mining, energy, infrastructure, retail, and development, investing over $100 million in Ukrainian mining projects over the past 8 years. I'm delighted, Serhiy, that you've joined us.
Thank you very much.
Next, I'm delighted to welcome Rear Admiral, retired Michael Hewitt, co-founder and CEO, IP3 Corporation. 31 years of service in the United States Navy, distinguishing himself across a diverse spectrum of defense-related competencies, and now focused on international energy, security, defense, and so much more. Thank you so much, Admiral Mike, as we call you, for joining us. And last but not least, I'm delighted to welcome Alexander Kravchenko, Managing Partner, McKinsey Ukraine. And Alexander also co-leads the firm's materials practice in Central Europe. He's also spearheading McKinsey's efforts to support Ukraine's recovery planning. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists, and I can't wait to get right into these conversations. Before we begin, I want to set the context as to why this is so important and why it's crucially vital that everyone understand the importance of Ukraine's natural resources and critical minerals bounty that lie beneath Ukraine's famous Chornozem, Black Earth. First, I want to quote Diane Francis from Ukraine Will Win. Because when you examine Putin's motivations, I think it's important to understand that he is a trillionaire tycoon. He controls a nasty oligarchy that's exploited and harvested the resources of Ukraine and other former colonies, as they call them, for decades. And what Diane Francis wrote, which I fully agree with, is that if we look at this in business terms, if the war costs $500 billion and he loses $350 billion in frozen assets and spends maybe $100, $200 billion more, then the capture of 26 trillion in natural resources, the capture of 12 trillion of that in critical minerals, or even half or a quarter represents a spectacular return on investment. Let's not forget that. Now, next, before I ask Alexandra to give us an overview of the space, I want us all to align on a vision of Ukraine in the next few years. We've heard so much in Davos this week. How do we end this war? What does Ukraine have to give up? What do security guarantees look like? When I start with end in mind, then I see a free, independent, and sovereign nation that's capable of defending itself in the land, sea, and air. I see allies that have spent $250 billion backing Ukraine with aid, with military support, with financial support, who have a skin in the game. I see 26 trillion, the size of Canada or Australia, of natural resources that Ukraine's allies and Ukraine together can develop for the wealth of the future of Ukrainians. And I see a $1 trillion investment opportunity for the country that isn't just gonna drive Ukraine's GDP, it's gonna drive GDP for decades to come in the EU, in US, in Western allies, because of the opportunities that are presented. So that's the big picture. Now let's dive deeper. Alexander, I take it to you, please. Give us an overview. We saw the video, but give us the McKinsey overview of the space, please.
Yeah. And Lena, thank you very much for, and like Ukraine House, for organizing this panel, and also it's an honor to be here. So just very brief context. So as McKinsey, we're really like committed to support recovery of Ukraine, and like one of the objectives we believe in is to catalyze private sector investment into strategic sectors. And we do believe that critical raw materials is probably like one of few sectors where like there is huge potential in terms of economic impact, but also which is very appealing for the international collaboration. And why do I believe so? And why do we believe so? I think this is a combination of like context, market context, which is happening right now, but also like quite unique Ukrainian value proposition in this context. So if you're thinking about the concept, first, like energy transition is definitely boosting demand for critical raw materials. So, for example, graphite, lithium, two commodities which are very relevant for Ukraine. So at McKinsey, we estimate that the global demand will increase 4 to 5 times in the next 10 to 15 years. We can all debate, okay, how quickly, what's the real pace of energy transition will be, but the trajectory is very, very clear. The demand is huge, and supply will be catching up, and probably will not be actually catching up with this demand increase. If we're thinking about, a lot of discussions also, in Ukrainian House, happening about, that NATO needs to increase defense spending. This increase in defense spending will drive significantly demand for titanium, especially for metallic titanium. This is one of the commodities where Ukraine is very rich. So I think there is market momentum, which is actually very, very supportive. Second important piece of context is geopolitical context. China controls more than 80% of global processing capacity in critical raw materials. And of course, our allies in the Western world, they're really concerned about diversifying and securing their own supply chains, which creates very strong momentum that these value chains will be reshuffled, reorganized, which opens up a unique window of opportunity for Ukraine to integrate into these international value chains together with our allies and build the supply chains together. And Ukraine does have a lot to offer. And it's not only about vast resources base, and we have we're top 5 country in terms of global reserves in graphite. We are top 10 in titanium, and by the way, if you take high quality rutile titanium, it's actually top 5. We are top 10 in iron ore, and even much better position in high quality magnetite iron ore. We are leaders in lithium in Europe, in uranium. So it's a long list of commodities, some of them you saw on the BGV video. But it's not only that. I think there is also a few components which Ukraine really can contribute to the world, and were quite unique actually, in combination with resources base, where Ukraine has a very strong play. So first is infrastructure. Ukraine is well covered with roads, railways, electricity. Like, go find it in Africa. Like in Africa, like to develop infrastructure will take you years and will increase cost of project by factor. You have already everything in Ukraine. The second one is like proximity to Europe, both logistically but also like geopolitically. So I think the combination of these factors, it's really like resources based, but also this like unique additional set of capabilities, so infrastructure at the proximity, and by the way, also capabilities and labor. Like Ukraine is actually one of few countries which, like developed mines, operated mines. We have like engineering schools, mining engineering schools. We do have actually a lot of know-how, like many of processing capabilities we are developing. So, and that's what really makes Ukraine a very unique partner and very strong partner to build these value chains together with allies in this changing context.
Thank you, Alexandra. That's perfect. I'd like to turn now to Alexei Sobolov, First Deputy Minister of Economy, and ask you, you know all of this. You are discussing critical minerals with our allies. You are signing agreements relating to this. What do you believe Ukraine has to offer, and do you think Ukraine is ready for an influx of investment in these areas?
Well, you heard and you've seen what Ukraine has, and I probably like the value I can bring to this panel is to relate some of the discussion that we're having. So like basically in most government-to-government discussions, mentioning critical raw materials gets immediate attention. So it just shows how strategic it is and how all the governments in Europe, like Middle East, US, everywhere understand the gravity of situation. So we need to reshore a lot of the manufacturing production, and it's not just a matter of business, it's became a matter of national security, so everybody is taking it extremely seriously. So what we're developing right now, a set of memoranda with different countries in Europe, like Britain, with France, considering another one with Italy, US as well. In the Middle East countries are really interested in that. So we see the momentum building for that, and that kind of gives us encouragement. The other part is that this is, of course, a very complicated sector. So all the projects are multi-million, like tens, hundreds of millions, like the entry ticket, and it takes time to develop. And of course, that's a great question. Is Ukraine ready, right? So I think we're on the halfway there, meaning that a lot of has been deregulated, and compared to, I don't know, 10 years and even like 7 years ago, the national agency that runs the licenses is working like really, really well and transparent. There are transparent licensing auctions, etc. But we need to do more. So we have a list of things from identifying who is responsible in the government to kind of pushing this forward all the time, to publishing the data, which was closed during the wartime, and now we ready to open up again, to changing how the licensing part works and how the share purchase agreement works to encourage more business, because this is complicated. Business would have to invest a lot upfront to then sometime in the future reap these rewards. And also one probably last thing, that any critical raw minerals project, and Ukraine doesn't want just to be, like the miner and then ship this out, right? As colleagues said, that we have the capability, the engineers, the technology, even the manufacturing to produce some of the steps in the value chain. So basically, every critical raw mineral project is a complex value chain that spans like half the globe or the whole of the globe. And but this is good. So this is what we're looking for to make Ukraine integrated in this like complex value chains with our like free world, So it is becomes part of the national security issue, not just for the business sake, right? But for the security of Europe, US, like Canada, and the G7 and plus partners who support us now. So that's how it adds to the complexity of the whole project, but also any projects that are going to be done in the critical raw minerals going to be strategic by design. And what I want to, kind of my last point, is that the government is really, really keen to make this happen, because this is a part of the national security, and as you can see, for these 3 years, Ukraine takes this very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And First Deputy Minister, help me do some myth busting here, because I think one of the questions I hear most often is, isn't all of this stuff in occupied territory? Isn't all of this located in occupied territory? And of course, we know that titanium ores are primarily in northern and central Ukraine. We know that graphite, central and western. We know that lithium, central. So help me with the myth busting.
Yeah, this is actually a great question. So some of this stuff is on the occupied territory, and this is like what we're saying is when people consider, okay, like the peace talks, etc., we just need to consider what's there, right? And if this is strategic reserve, maybe we need to understand where the lines are drawn. But the majority of the critical raw minerals, like the titanium, the uranium mines, the lithium, are on the territory that controlled Ukraine, some of them like hundreds kilometers away, some of them thousands. So also we were looking at the universe of these critical raw minerals, how to make it easier for the investors to enter. And for example, gold is in the western part of Ukraine, like really safe, and there are still some licenses available. So basically, to step into that, there is business case for that, and we can, and it is like, it takes several years instead of like 5+ for the bigger, more complex like projects like lithium, for example. And the example of that is that investors are not shy of investing. So just last year, we had a big privatization of the titanium ore miner done by Azerbaijani company. So they bought like critical mineral company that produces that has some additional licenses, and they're going to be developing that. So this is not a myth, and then people put quite substantial amount of money on the stake.
Thank you, thank you. I'd like to move over to Sidhi now, and for us it was very important to get a deep private sector perspective, that we're not just talking generalities, you know, this is how much we have, these are the areas, but we actually speak to an individual who is investing now, who has invested 100 million over 8 years, who, irrespective of any full-fledged invasion and military activity going on in the country, they are working every single day, doing feasibility studies, investing, making projects bankable. And Sidhi, please take us through your very experienced work that you're doing already in Ukraine, and obviously not waiting for the war to be over.
Hello, everyone. Leonard, thank you so much for such a presentation. Here is my role is to present Ukrainian business, and I will not tell a lot about some geopolitical perspective of critical raw materials, but I want to bring the, let's say, experience for all of you and for all of our partners, that this is a reality and this is some real projects that we can do together. First of all, that we bring the real material from our graphite deposit. It is here on the stage, and this is our present to Ukraine House Davos. You will leave it here, and everyone can touch something and be aware that actually we have this graphite, and we are creating the product of the future now. And we prepared some brief presentation, let's say, to jump into some figures and to share with you our projects that we are doing in Ukraine now. And all of you can
Sidhi,
scan
just
the barcode.
let me interrupt for a second. You can, scan. There's a QR code behind us and here as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and we know for sure that everyone now has a smartphone and can download this presentation and, let's say, a very brief understand what we are doing now in Ukraine. BGV started investment into CRM a long period of time ago when it was not mainstream like now. we almost 10 years have been investing around $100 million into different projects. And let's say it was a question about if they are quite safe in terms of the territory. This is the map where you can see the majority of our projects, and you will understand that actually they are quite safe on the quite safe territory. This is the central part of Ukraine, the western part of Ukraine, Zhytomyr region, Kirovograd region. And let's say now I will focus on a few of them. First of all, this is graphite project. As you know, and you now a little bit advanced in critical raw materials from the video that we watched at the beginning of our panel. And you know that graphite, this is a material of future, because it's very hard to imagine the battery in electric vehicle. It's hard to imagine some, let's say, energy storage without graphite. And we in Ukraine, we have 6% of the world resources of graphite. And we are #1 in Europe country in terms of the resource of graphite. In our pipeline, we have 2 projects of graphite. One, it is the Balachivka project. It's quite advanced. We spent, let's say, a lot of effort to bring the bankable, let's say, value to this project. And now we know for sure that it's pretty good to be spheric, to make the product with high added value. SPG, this is spherical pure graphite. On the market now, this is the main material for anodes of batteries, and China controls around 97% of this material. That's why, let's say, it's fully dependent from one country to the whole world. This is the timeline of the project, and we will be ready to be in a production in 2027, 2029. Now we completed feasibility study, we completed a lot of laboratory analysis, and we done all the work based on the international standards and with quite, let's say, advanced international companies. The second project that I want to present to you, this is a beryllium project. Beryllium is a, let's say, very interesting material, because only 3 or 4 countries in the world, they have a beryllium as a resource. And bless God, Ukraine has beryllium in Zhytomyr region. This is a complex deposit. It's not only about beryllium. It's about a lot of different rare earth minerals and different interesting things. On one hand, this is unique deposits. On the other hand, it's quite complicated to be developed, actually. We are quite advanced in beryllium now in Ukraine. We are in the process of completing a pre-feasibility study and actually ready to go deeply into the design. One more thing that I want to show you, this is uranium perspective in Ukraine, because uranium, this is it's quite interesting topic now for all the high developed countries, because everyone understands that without nuclear power it's very hard to imagine efficient economy. And bless God, Ukraine has around 10% of the world uranium ores, world uranium reserves. And we are quite advanced in uranium because we have a production. This is a state company, and based on the experience that we in BGV have, we can make the exploration of 20 tons of uranium per year, additionally, actually. And the last thing that I want to tell you that now there are a lot of different information that CRM, this is a quite, let's say, complicated topic, of course, on the one hand it is, but actually I want to emphasize some advantages, our Ukrainian advantages, why we can create the economy future, and why we do believe that Ukraine will be the part of world value chain in critical raw materials and in the products with high added value. No, first of all, that this everything that you heard from different experts, that our government is fully involved in this topic now. You heard that the President Zelensky put critical raw materials as the plan of victory of Ukraine. You know that Ukraine has a very good engineer school and a lot of specialists for that, and of course, a very reliable partners who can help to develop this project in the country. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sidhi. And Sidhi, what I take away from your presentation is that there are real, tangible projects that are bankable now, that you're pursuing, that you're attracting the debt for, that you're investing in, and you're not waiting until the war's over.
Yeah, right. Actually, and one sample that we bring to the Davos stage, we are investing before the war started and after the war started. We know for sure that we have to do the homework, let's say, for our company and for the country as well, because it's very hard to deal with American and European partners without the fully bankable, let's say, researchers for these projects. They're quite complicated because everything that we have now in Ukraine is based on our local standards, and we need to transfer that into international standards. It takes a lot of time and a lot of some investment. For example, just a small example, to make the JORC or NI for some rare earths, or let's say a critical raw material, it takes around 3-5 years and the budget around $10 million. Yeah. This is the reality that we face not only in Ukraine, but in Ukraine it takes 3-5 years. But for example, we investigated in Italy, it takes around 12-17 years. That's why we are quite advanced in the speed, let's say, to make this project alive in a very short period of time.
Fantastic. Okay, Admiral Mike, you know, we saw yesterday one of the very first announcements that the Trump administration made was the $500 billion into energy to power AI, those private sector companies that are coming forward and ensuring that the U.S., together with the Trump administration, is well positioned for the future. I want you to comment on why that's important for the U.S., for Ukraine, and also give us that whole connection, the critical minerals, the energy, the AI connection, why all of this is important.
Well, thanks, Lynn. And it's great to be back at Davos, Ukraine House. I was here last year when we had this conversation about critical minerals. And I think from a U.S. perspective, they had no sight picture on Ukraine and critical minerals. We kind of started that conversation a year ago. So now, when you listen to politicians in America talk about Ukraine, one of the first things they say are critical minerals. Lindsey Graham leads that conversation. Why does Ukraine matter? He says critical minerals. Well, it's much more important than that. But what you're starting to see the dots connect between the importance of Ukraine and its resources, but also its ingenuity, its AI, its innovation. I mean, BGV is just a great example of a company that's privatizing an important industry for the future. Let's just think about what Trump is about to do, and we can talk about the peace plan, and that's going to happen. What he's mainly focused on in an article I wrote about a month ago, you win the war by winning the peace, and you win the peace through economic entanglement. And what does that mean? That means, why does Ukraine matter to American industry? Why does it matter to American politicians? Critical resources will probably define a large part of the long-term stability and relationship between the West and Ukraine. And I can't think of a better industry to help tie that together. So let's just talk about what Trump is about to do. And he's leading this very aggressively through executive order. He is very concerned about U.S. dependence on uranium, U.S. dependence upon Russian fuel. In the mid-'80s, the United States produced 100% of the enriched uranium for the global market. Today, we produce none. We basically handed it off to the Russians. Then you look at graphite. We handed that off to the Chinese. So if you start to talk about the importance of these minerals and you realize it's underpinned by geopolitics because our adversary controls the cycle, controls the entire value chain. You look at AI and these conversations about big data, they don't happen without power. So if you've followed the last 6 months of announcements in America, almost every major data center company has announced it wants nuclear power. But what it realizes is that the government and the utility can't deliver that to them. So they're doing it themselves, which means this is about privatization of industries. So uranium is going to be the most critical mineral for the growth of nuclear power globally, which is tied to AI. I look at Ukraine and I see the center of gravity of AI development in the country today. We knew that before the war. Now the world knows it because you've really been defending your country through your own use of AI in drone warfare, advanced analytics, and the like. So as we start to think about nuclear power to AI, uranium is going to be the key ingredient to make that happen. I was fortunate enough to be in Ukraine before the war. And my founder, Bud McFarlane, who used to work for Ronald Reagan, said, we got to get to Ukraine because Ukraine is going to be a critical ally between us and Russia. I didn't really know what he meant at the time, but now I clearly do. And so when we look at not just the critical minerals of Ukraine, obviously geopolitically positioned, this conversation through the Trump administration is going to be about getting off of Chinese graphite, getting off of Russian uranium and Russian fuel. And the most important country to help us do that is Ukraine. And the White House is starting to say this. They're hosting a panel on critical mineral strategic value this week. And that's going to lead this conversation of Ukraine and peace. And then maybe the last thing I'll mention is the privatization of these huge industries such as nuclear power, such as critical minerals. And the first deputy prime minister mentioned it. They're going to set the conditions for companies and capital to come to Ukraine, which will help us maintain sustainable peace. And what McKinsey said, I think the document that Sasha laid out is setting the roadmap for us. And then finally, companies like BGV that are opening the door for U.S. capital and U.S. companies to come to Ukraine. I'll kind of end this where I started. Economic entanglement is going to create the next 100-year relationship between the United States and Ukraine. And it's going to be much more valuable than defeating Putin.
Admiral Mike, thank you so much. Thank you. Those are incredibly important points. And I want to turn around the question that I asked First Deputy Minister of Economy about Ukraine being ready. Are U.S. investors ready? Is this on their radar screen? I know that you've done a lot of advocacy also, not only in Washington, but also among U.S. investors. Are they ready to capitalize on this opportunity?
It's an interesting question. Based on the work that we are doing now, actually, we understand that they are ready. They are ready, but they are waiting for some, let's say, exact things. Yeah. First of all, that they are ready to deal with the projects that are well prepared. Right. This is very important because Ukraine is quite advanced country in mining, but it is not so advanced in Syrian mining. All the projects that we have now in Ukraine, only two exceptions, that is titanium and uranium. All other projects, they are, let's say, startups. Just like in our sector, we name them greenfields. Yeah? Right. That's why we need to do this preliminary work inside of the country. And of course, that there are a lot of other risks. First of all, that this is a war risk, because to be sure that our graphite project needs around $450 million of investment. And this is a very good idea that Ambassador of Ukraine to Great Britain, Zaluzhny, said that you will never invest €1 million into the project if you understand that the missile can come, let's say, and all your investment will be spoiled, let's say. That's why it's quite important. But we are doing a lot of work now, and we are quite optimistic in understanding that we can create together with our partners, because without them, it will be very hard. Yeah.
Alexander, do you want to jump in, or
just probably Mike, like a little bit of comment elaborating what Sergey said. So I think again, when we look at McKinsey, so only for energy transition, which takes only part of critical raw materials, the needed investment in Europe, like next 5 years, will be between 200 and 300 billion dollars. So it's the size of the pie, or like the size of the sub pie, right? So, but it's still huge, and Ukraine can really compete for significant part of this pie. Now, to be really competitive there, like a lot of capital need to be deployed in Ukraine, and also what Sergey said. So this is actually, like especially at this stage in Ukraine, it's quite risky capital. So there will be a lot of financial support will be needed to catalyze private capital, but the elements of concessional and public funds, which need to flow to basically de-risk. And also at McKinsey, we see that actually this topic is across all different countries, and of course it's extremely acute in Ukraine. But through the entire life cycle of the projects, pre-feasibility study, project finance, also like innovating financing for R&D, this will be required. And I think this is the right order to start discussing this topic. How do we provide financial instruments which would catalyze private sector?
Thank you. Okay, so I want to make sure that we've got time for questions. So have your questions ready. Before I call on you, I'd like each of our panelists just to say what you want folks to be left with. The people on the live stream, the people in the audience, what message do you have to them about the importance of critical minerals in Ukraine and what Ukraine has to offer the world in this context? Maybe, Oleksiy, we'll start with you.
I would just say that however complex this issue is, this is real. BGV, like the privatization, the investment, the strategic, like all the factors, they come in together, and we have also the financial programs, the IFIs for that. So I think this would be a missed opportunity for whoever has the capability and knowledge not to engage in that, because this vacuum will be filled by your competitors. That's all we're saying. And from the government side, like we take it very, very seriously, and you'll see a lot of effort there and a lot of actions that are going to help to shorten the lead time of all these projects.
Siddhi?
Look, we started investment into CRM more than 10 years ago, and my personal understanding that now the best time, let's say, to boost the level of the speed of all CRM projects in our country, because we have all the necessary, let's say, parts for that, the right focus of our international partners. The second thing, the right focus of the government, and to put this topic into the high-level plan of victory of our country. We have the right attitude from Ukrainian business to that. We have, let's say, right understanding of our partners in terms of the necessity to finance these projects and to bring this project finance and to bring some technologies, to bring, let's say, access to market, because it's very hard to receive access to market as well. That's why my personal feeling that we are in the very right time, but we need to do a lot of work, everyone on their own place.
I think what we've been talking about for the last couple of years, even before the war, is what does a relationship with Ukraine look like? A relationship with America and any country around CRM and nuclear power is an 80 to 100-year relationship. It's not transactional. Those were the conditions we were trying to set before the war. Now it's more important than ever. Ukraine, thankfully, had 50% of its electricity from nuclear power. You weren't so caught up in getting away from fossil fuel. You were an energy-rich, energy-independent country before the war. That has served you well for the last 2 years. I look at Ukraine and I think about what are the 3 things that the U.S. can associate with Ukraine that will transcend politics, Democrat or Republican, so that when we talk about Ukraine, it's similar to the way we talk about Saudi Arabia and oil from 50 years ago. The first is CRM. A relationship with America is wholly dependent upon our ability to be secure with our supply chain. Ukraine offers us that more so than ever, and we need to focus on that. The second is nuclear power. Ukraine is a giant in nuclear power. This is why I was there before the war. We were actually working to export nuclear power to Poland. So Ukraine is energy independent. Not to steal a word from President Trump, but I think Ukraine needs to be energy dominant. Being energy dominant in the region sets you apart, makes you a vital national interest to America. And those are important words as they start to prioritize relationships. I think Ukraine and America, and by extension, Ukraine and its allies, can have a relationship that is far more important than just winning this war. And then the last is AI. The world is trying to grow AI as fast as it can. Without the brick and mortar of it, the CRM and the nuclear power, you can't do AI. So if I'm sitting in Ukraine right now and the Minister of Economics and the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Finance and the President are thinking about this, they see this as a wonderful opportunity to privatize the most important growth industry in the planet, which is AI for the world. You've got the technology, you've got the people, you've demonstrated that, you bring in the nuclear power, and now all of a sudden you're satisfying the climate change agenda, the energy sovereignty agenda, the energy dominance agenda, and I want President Trump to look at Ukraine and say, that's my ally in energy dominance. And I think that's before us, and we have an opportunity to do it.
Thank you so much. I think that connection with AI is so critical. I mean, we actually don't have an idea of how many computers, supercomputers are in China. Maybe the intelligence community does, I'm sure they do, but publicly, no. 4 in the US, only 1 in Europe, in France, backed by Xavier Niel. And here we have Ukraine that has this energy dominance, that has over 300,000 tech specialists, that is a absolute partner, ally in AI development. Some of the smartest people on the planet. It all comes together exactly as you put it. Thank you. Alexander.
Yeah, 2 quick points. The first, so I'm consultant, so I try to put everything in like metrics 2 by 2, right? So, and if the axis of the metrics is like size of economic impact and like feasibility, then CRM is the very right top corner of these metrics, and like I do strongly believe that. And the second point is I do very much look forward seeing Lena back to Zhovty Vody to close like uranium deal, which will be also very complementary to nuclear and AI.
Yes. Alexander, few people know that Dan Bilek hired me in 1993, and we were both in Zhovty Vody, for years. And had we done these projects now, it was 30 years ago. Yeah. But definitely all of it is imprinted in my mind, as is, we recently learned that Jim Timmerty funded this Minerals Atlas Group, right? I mean, Minerals MAG, Minerals Advisory Group, and produced one of the first atlases of where all the mineral deposits are in Ukraine. It's incredible. And that was 30 years ago. Exactly. All of this is coming together. This is not serendipity. This is not a coincidence. This is going to happen. I'm going to turn it over to questions. I want to say the first question to Admiral Mike on Greenland. We're hearing so much in the news about Greenland. And we think, and there's lots of people in this room that understand the strategic importance that goes back to critical minerals. Tell us more.
Well, Greenland strategically is an area that if we don't have some say in it, Russia and China will. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, which they now call the Arctic Road Initiative, Putin and Xi are just cutting a pathway through the north of the Arctic Circle. When Trump said it in 2016, it was kind of dismissed as hubris. Now it's actually being discussed and with a clear understanding. I will say this, the critical minerals of Greenland are plentiful. They are very hard to get to. So I don't see this as a competition with Ukraine. I see it as a complement to the work in Ukraine. I mean, the president is actively engaging peace through strength. He's actively engaging a deterrent model. He's changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. I don't know what that really means other than, okay. Greenland, Canada, I think he wants it's not so much about drill baby drill or these things. It's really about energy sovereignty. It's about nation sovereignty. It's about westernized democracies. And I think he is going to associate all of those things with Ukraine. And the last thing I may mention is President Zelensky's speech here yesterday. It was unbelievable. And I think the message he sent was clear that Ukraine has to be able to defend itself. It has to be sovereign. Sure, we want to have allies and we want to have partners. But just like America says, make America great again, the president's saying we have to be sovereign in our defense industry, in our economics, and in our association with NATO and the EU and the rest of the world. It was an incredibly powerful message, kind of the one comparisons to Churchill, where you wake up the world to understand Putin isn't going to stop at Ukraine. And he has every intention to move on. So I think that's the message that I took away from this week at Davos, particularly with the first deputy prime minister and her meetings with the industry. And of course, the president's speech here was really important.
Thank you. Dan, you've got a question, and then Federico.
Thanks, Lena. Some people would argue that my only major contribution to Ukraine was hiring you in 1993, which I'm very proud of. I'd like to come back to the issue of energy dominance. I think that's a great point, Mike. And in nuclear, 50% of Ukraine's energy was produced by nuclear before the full-scale invasion, and now we have an energy sector that is basically limping. So it's been completely destroyed. That's a disaster, but it's also a phenomenal opportunity, as you pointed out. When we come back to revisit nuclear, which I don't see any alternative to, especially if anybody wants to make the climate change objectives, there's no other way to do it. What role will SMRs play? And this is because I don't see us building massive nuclear reactors. Repairing massive nuclear reactors is going to be enough of a challenge. How do we get to that critical mass of nuclear power generation that's going to power the next level, and what impact do critical minerals have on that?
Well, I'll give you a real quick answer, because that's obviously my passion for the last 7 years is privatizing nuclear power for offtake. And the only way to compete against Russia and China is to move into these modular reactors. Ukraine is so well positioned for this. Even before the war, the president understood, I need to decentralize my energy so that I'm more resilient. SMRs open the opportunity to use your own critical minerals to power your own offtake. And your own offtake is AI. And you're exactly right. Since the war began, I say this, and I try not to be too belligerent when I say it, but two things went away when Russia invaded Ukraine: COVID and climate change. And now it's about energy dominance. And so, Ukraine is so well positioned to lead the next century of decarbonization, reliable power, decentralized, and privatization. I always go back to the same thing. We need to privatize these industries to be effective against the state-owned enterprises of Russia and China. And that's what Ukraine offers the world.
Yeah, so we support the privatization part. However, it is a bit trickier with the nuclear, but not excluded in general. So that's one. The other SMRs are in the list of strategic projects. So that we kind of discussed here, and in general in the list that the government approved, and we're going to support that. We have MOU on that with the US company, as I understand, Energatom. So yeah, this is very much aligned with what was said just now.
Yeah.
Federico, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe I can add something from the business perspective.
Please add,
the question was not
please.
to us, but
No, this is
I have something
interactive.
to
Jump
it.
in, please.
Yeah, but I have something to it. Actually, the UBO of BGV, Gennady Butkevich, he is a very great believer and visionary in CRM, small modular reactor topic. And actually, he wants to make the first installation of SMR in Ukraine, like in Europe, because you know that now we have a very limited level of installation in the world, maybe in Japan, in China, something in Russia, but actually we are doing a lot to bring this technology to Ukraine.
Federico, please.
I'm a journalist from Italy, Corriere della Sera. Since I'm a journalist, I need to put things in print, and I want to make clear about one detail. You didn't talk much about lithium. But lithium is well known to be an important mineral that is present in the free area of. So my question is very direct. Sorry, I'm not diplomatic. My understanding, at least what Mr. Firtash says, that he has the concessions. Is that the case, or this is not exactly like he puts it, and lithium is also up for new investments from different actors?
So just a point, and then Alexei, if you can take that question. Yes, Ukraine is rich in lithium. 1/3 of EU's proven reserves of lithium are in Ukraine. And the question, are they all locked up by existing, or are there additional opportunities for new investment? Alexei.
Yeah, I will just what I know. Like I haven't seen this quote, so I don't know what he's referring to. But I know, for example, in the licenses that we were discussing in strategic ones, like the Dobre lithium license was the big, the big part of the resources is up for partnership. So that's there, and yeah, and maybe you can add anything.
I can add only one fact that just to clarify and just to understand about lithium in Ukraine, we need to do PFS, first of all, pre-feasibility study based on the international standard. After that, we will understand if it is feasible and reasonable to make the exploration of this material, and what is the amount, what is the economical different figures, and so on.
Alexander.
No, just like building that, it's not captured, again, to my knowledge, it's not like fully captured by Firtash, and as Sergei said, so this potential still to be proven by PFS, yes. But like Ukraine indeed has strong resources in this area.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic, yes.
Hello to everybody. Excuse my poor English. I'm a private investor from Switzerland. I'm Ukrainian, but from Switzerland. Maybe it seems to me, but I hear the old mottos. We have a good infrastructure, we have people, we have engineering, and other. Yes, it's a perfect experience of company, but it looks like extensive, looks like drill, baby, drill. Yeah. My question to Deputy Minister. Maybe it's my misunderstanding, but what is the new approaches now in strategy of supporting investors, and especially in insurance of investments in Ukraine? It's very important because we continue to invest during the war now. Please comment.
Thank you.
Okay, Alexei?
Oh, yes. The question is what the government offers, and we have set up several programs that help investors to invest. One of them is through investment parks. So the government covers the costs of the utilities that you connect to your companies. So some of the companies that work in the critical mineral sector, they design the parts of the plants as investment park, and then the government covers that. So there's a budget line in the budget that helps investors get the money, and the program is actually working. It started working last year. The other one is support for large-scale investment. So above 30 investments, above 30 million euros, the government covers up to 15% of upfront capex. No, you have to apply. So you apply through Ukraine Invest, and we already supported 2 transactions. 2 are in the line, and there's a pipeline. So yeah, you need to kind of present the documents. But so far, I know kind of nobody said that this is like either overly complicated or has some issues with the process. So basically, we started disbursing the money just last year. Before that, businesses were saying like, we're not really sure that the government actually going to cover that. No, we're actually paying the money. So one of those clients was Astarta. Okay, so for risk insurance, it took a while. So last year we launched two big insurance facilities. One is for EBRD, for goods in transit. The other one is for DFC. Both of them probably like $200 million of coverage, and we're gonna be doing couple of $100 million more this year through the donor funding. So what's that? It works through Ukrainian insurance companies, so you can go and underwrite a war risk insurance premium policy right now. So it's just started working from December, so it's fairly new. But from what we heard from Ukrainian insurance companies, that they're planning to write like hundreds of those policies this year. So this is available. Yeah, it took like a year and a half to do that, but it's there. Thank you.
Okay, I know there's so many questions, but I've already been given the absolute hard cut. So first and foremost, I want to thank all of the panelists. Say thank you so much. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Admiral Mike. Thank you, Sidhi. Thank you, First Deputy Minister of Economy. This is not the only discussions that are being had on critical minerals. At the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin, there was a whole roundtable, packed house, packed audience, lots of folks who want to know more about this. We're going to continue to have these discussions in Ukraine House. Please feel free to speak to the panelists. Please feel free to reach out, to leave your contacts. And I'll hand it over now to Ulyana. Thank you so much. Let's turn this from a heist into the opportunity that drives Ukraine and its allies' economic engagement in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Lena, thank you for the excellent moderation. Thank you so much. This is our presents and a little presents to you. Thank you very much to keep you warm in Davos. So you already have this. So I'm sorry. And this is for you. Okay, good. Sorry. Okay, and I would like also to say thank you for the great partnership on this panel to the BGV Group International. Thank you so much for supporting this. And Razom do Перемоги. So thank you. Thanks again, everyone. So stay for the group photo. And to our guests, I would like to say that the next panel will start at 2:30 here on successes of the existing investors. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.